Just one moment. Almost done. Just sharing this. Alright. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم مرحبا خوانيين لايتس بخير راغلي خوش آمديد and of course swagatam people swagatam. Alright, ahlan wa sahlan bikum. Alright people, Momo is in the house. Is that you, Momo? Is that you though? Is that you? Sid, alright. Doing it. Right, everything is well. Yep, everything is well. Lillahi alhamd. Belgium won. Okay, I don't watch any football, so I've got no idea. The only way I hear anything about football is I see some of the memes. Alright, so people, what's going down? What's going down, man? As you can see, my... Alright. It's coming along. You see... The only place ever where hair grows slowly for some reason for me is here. Other than that, the Pakistani genes are like in overflow everywhere else. But here, this... Right, so people, what's going on? Hamad, ahlan wa sahlan bikum, ahlan wa sahlan. Those of you just tuning in, click like, click share, people. Somebody's saying that it makes me look bright with noor. Of course, noor to hai baba. Noor to hai, noor hi noor. Sarapa noor. That's what. Noorun ala noor. Yahdillahu li noorihi man yasha. Allah. For I am the light, and none shall reach the Father except through me. Oh, sorry, wrong religion. Getting carried away. That's today's Monday. Yeah, it's that's wrong religion. Right, so all right, Elizabeth ahlan wa sahlan is wearing Nike haram. You know, from some of the ridiculous stuff you see in the Muslim kind of, I don't know how to say it, the Muslim scene, so to speak. It's the kind of Muslim scene, right? So ridiculous stuff, seriously. Is Nike haram? They're Nike. Somebody sent me a link to that. I still haven't watched it. Actually, I clicked on it and then I thought, what the hell am I doing? I thought seriously, let's get back to that TV series. I mean, right, so Salam Mufti, I graduate tomorrow. Ameen. Mu'adh is in the house. Alright, Mu'adh, you're doing it. Those of you just tuning in, click like, click share, people. Get this out there. Right, yeah, so some people are trying to say, well, Nike is haram, and this is haram, and that is haram, and people are so trigger happy with the term haram. It's like, haram, haram. It's like Stallone, haram. So, well, right, Sagatam, yep. Swagatam. Did you see Ali Dawa call Majid Nawaz and call him a kafir? I did see that. Abu Layth, I will send you a watch. Hi. You nutty. Trying to kill me with kindness? As the poet says, that tabah karne ke aur bhi kahin raaste the faraz. That to destroy me, there were many other ways as well, faraz. न जाने उन्हें क्यों मोहब्बत का ही ख्याल आया. That why is it that the only way they thought was through love? Ya salam. Shukran for your kindness and courtesy. No, send me your address. Ah, naughty. What if you're trying to turn up? At least turn up with a. You got to make a date first. We can't just turn up. I mean, so, all right, people, what's going down? The weather, god damn. What do you think of Imam Tawhidi? Tawhidi, as opposed to Imam Shirki. Imam Tawhidi. I've seen a few things of Imam Tawhidi. It's interesting because I've seen some suggestions. You click on one thing and you watch it, and then YouTube gives you all these suggestions. YouTube, artificial intelligence, right? So it's shown me a few things, and I've watched a few things. To be fair, in some of the things, credit where credit is due. He's speaking a lot of sense, speaking about the deen being one of compassion, that the message of Islam has become overly distorted, that Islam has kind of got hijacked. I agree with all those things that he's saying there in some of those clips I've seen. I have seen some other clips of his where he's really provocative. I don't know if they're out of context or they're old. I don't know how out of context they could be, but where he's saying some really disrespectful things about Sayyidina Umar radiallahu an and stuff like this, and I find that very highly irresponsible. I mean, obviously, as a Muslim, Sunni Muslim, I find it utterly unacceptable, but I also find his actions, if that is what he's provided those clips were legitimate. I mean, they weren't kind of dubbed or something like this. I have seen some where he's saying all kinds of things about Sayyidina Umar radiallahu an and stuff like this. And I think that is, if that be true, then that's highly irresponsible. Okay. That's that Imam Tawhidi. Because I really think that there needs to be bridges built between the Sunni main Muslims in general and between the Shia community. I think we really need to kind of bridge gaps, and we need to kind of at least just learn to kind of get on. And I think there is no solution. If I'm going to be honest, there is no solution to these kind of differences that the Sunni and Shia have. I don't think there's any solution to them, but except for the fact that we just don't discuss them between ourselves. So, and we refrain from abuse. Now, if that can happen, I believe bridges can definitely be built, and I believe it's important to build these bridges, because most Muslims that grow up Muslim, they don't really understand what is Sunni, what is Shia, what is these kind of things, and then there's just like a hatred, and there's like a lot of cussing, a lot of dissing, and I just feel that that's not the way forward. That's all. I feel that, really, to me as a person, I'm going to be honest, me as a person, I feel that I obviously, I've been very vocal about it in the past. I have the utmost respect for the wives of the Prophet, the companions, and all these people. I do accept, like everybody else, that nobody's infallible. However, I wouldn't be really too critical of the companions like that. Not on a personality scale like that. I know sometimes when we're discussing hadith, and we've said that some of the scholars in the past, like the Hanafi madhab and other people, they divided the Sahaba, the companions, as those who were like true, like, I don't know if true is the better word, but the core companions, as in those who actually spent time with the Prophet, participated in expeditions and did things, and those who maybe just saw him. And then some divided them as people who were learned companions and scholars, and those who were just I mean, they were companions, but they weren't known as the most learned amongst them. And this is where the debate on Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu comes, because the Hanafi madhab highly, I mean, it mentioned in the early usul books, as did some other scholars, that Abu Hurairah was not from the kind of the scholar companions, and therefore you have to be wary when he's transmitting certain things, because it may be by meaning, and the meaning may have got, and even after him it may have got kind of shuffled up. So things like this are different, but to criticize their personality, I think you got to be wary, because it's a very sensitive topic. So I completely, I would just say leave that alone. And I know that, to me, that if you're going to criticize them, you see, this is the weary thing that you see, because last year there was this whole thing where people were criticizing, and I said, well, if you're going to criticize them, why don't you, if you want to be objectively critical, then you would apply the same critical lens to even Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. Why only to Muawiyah or Umar, or why not to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu? And I mentioned last year a lot of the scholars who held that stance, including Imam Malik, who was critical of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. In an objective way, he was critical. He never had no hatred or anything. Obviously loved Sayyidina Ali, but he was critical of him in saying that Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu did pursue power, and therefore he saw that kind of paved the way for some of his judgments. Now, and then a lot of people got annoyed when I quoted that, and it's triggered off a storm, and it did all of this last year. And to me, really, obviously, then I dealt with it. But in hindsight now, you know, having moved on almost a year, a year older, I think like these things, like to me as a person, do they really matter? Like, I mean, like history, whatever's happened has happened. Like, I don't know, us talking about it, it's different. Yeah, we can talk about it, but we can't change it. Whatever's happened has happened. And we need to really focus on the present, and we need to focus on how to move forward and how to have bridges between us. The Shia, the Sunni, and I say Sunni by a very wide, I'll include include our Wahhabi brethren in that as well. All of us Sunni, as in the mainstream, because Sunni as well is a huge spectrum. What does Sunni mean? I mean, nobody truly knows what Sunni means, by the way. It's such a blag, isn't it? What is Sunni? I mean, when did this term start actually emerge, Ahl Sunnah? It's amazing, because the Salaf never used this term. They never said, by the way, we are Ahl Sunnah. This comes much after the Salaf. And then it's amazing because, but anyway, today it exists. Sunni orthodoxy, right? So but the point is, we need to move forward. So that was an answer stemming from what are my views on people like Imam Tawhidi. I don't know him. I mean, I don't know him at all, really, not on any personal. I've seen some videos. Some videos I've seen very decent kind of things being said by him. In some videos I've seen very provocative, irresponsible things being said. So I don't know, but I don't know him that well. I've never really paid too much attention to his thing. Right, so differences aren't right. Yeah, I don't actually feel that the differences, honestly, between Sunni and Shia are so huge. I think it's just a historical perspective, that's all, on politics, on leadership and stuff like that. That's it. Because, you know, all these other things, like I watched this debate, a Shia friend, he sent me a link to a discussion of his with a Sunni at Speaker's Corner. Speaker's, whatever they call it, Speaker's Corner, Hyde Park, whatever. So I watched, not all of it, but I watched some of it, and they were speaking, and in between they were talking about Sunni, Shia kind of differences, and they kept bringing up mut'a, you know, this temporary marriage, and and obviously, in all honesty, if we're going to be fair, the Sunnis are unfair on this matter. If we're going to be objective, that they're unfair in slating the Shia on mut'ah, temporary marriage, because really mut'ah is to do with fiqh, is to do with how we practice like the laws of Islam, which is nothing to do with beliefs. So mut'ah is simply having a temporary marriage. Now, whether you accept it or don't accept it is a matter of fiqh. It's not actually a matter of iman. And for some reason, we've made it a matter of iman. And what the hell has it got to do with iman? And there's been many sahaba who allowed mut'ah, coming right down to the likes of scholars like Ibn Ashur from, the great Maliki legend. People like this, they allowed mut'ah. It wasn't. And today the Sunnis have this equivalent, which in slang terms is called nikahul misyar, which is like a low commitment kind of marriage, where it's just what I call one of Erik Erikson's stages in psychology and development, which he says low commitment, high exploration. So these are like, and the Sunnis, I think really, to be honest with you, if the Sunni scholars weren't that critical of mut'ah, let's be honest, they would be on it like they would be madly on mut'ah, if we're just going to be honest, because all the Muslim circles seem to be discussing all the time is just marriage, like massively deprived and depraved. So let's just face it, that, so why are you bashing the Shia and mut'ah? That's just I just find, is it just a point of jealousy? Anyway, let's move on. All right, so what's going on? Right, I've done a bit of shopping, people, some book shopping. You can't really see my books here, but loads. I spoke last week about Sahih Bukhari and this research that I've been doing for a little while now. Somebody said mut'ah is fun though. I kind of wish Sunnis believed in it too. Believe. Believe. Of course we are people of belief. On that note, there is people who are interested in research on the topic of mut'ah. There is a recent Maliki scholar from Morocco who's published a whole book after his research, which I think it was his thesis, but his research is called زواج المتعة قراءة جديدة في الفكر السني, which means that mut'ah marriage, like temporary marriage, a revisiting based on Sunni thought. And it's really interesting because he argues in this book that mut'ah is not actually haram, but only through Sunni sources. And it's really fascinating, his kind of whole, and he has a debate with Sheikh, with the Salafi Sheikh. It's on YouTube. His name is Ibn al-Azraq, this doctor. And he debates in Morocco. He's Moroccan, and he debates another Moroccan Salafi. So he's Maliki. He debates a Salafi by a popular da'i, Salafi da'i by the name Sheikh Fazazi. And he's debating him, and the debate was so dumb, some of it. It's like the usual kind of responses, which I found very immature, like, okay, if you think mut'ah is okay, then marry your daughter to me now. I'll do mut'ah with her. I thought, that's like very rude. Like, what the hell is that about? What the hell is that about? Like, how could you, seriously, could you imagine two academic kind of like professors, like let's say in Oxford or Cambridge, having a debate like this? Is this how, what a stupid thing to say. Like, oh, so you think it's halal to have a temporary, okay, then marry your daughter to me as a temporary marriage. And then that guy says something like, get lost, I would never marry my daughter to you, even if you came asking. And then this Sheikh Fazazi says, well, I wouldn't want to marry your daughter because she's going to be ugly like you. I thought, and this is on YouTube. I thought, wow, this is like a debate between, I thought, this is just, wow, this is amazing, man. Like how dumb People are, anyway, moving on. So people, last week, as I was mentioning, I'm doing research for a little while now on this whole Sahih al-Bukhari, and can we, how certain can we be that the book Sahih al-Bukhari, with all its content, is the work of Imam Bukhari himself? The entire content, not just like most of it or some of it, but the entire content we have today. How certain can we be that that is the Imam's work himself? So there seems to be it seems to be quite it seems to be not as clear as I once thought, or many people believe it to be. So, and I was mentioning last week, there is a book. So this is the book. This is one book, people, that it's published by a Moroccan, I mean, the author is a Moroccan kind of researcher. His name is Rashid Aylal, and he published this book. This is one book, I mean, in the whole discourse, called Sahih al-Bukhari Nihayat al-Ustura, Sahih al-Bukhari, the end of a fairy tale. And this was published last year in Morocco, and then what happened is the Salafis kind of made a big hoo-ha, and they said, well, burn the book. And they got the local magistrate involved, who then prohibited any further publishing of it. So there were very few copies left. So I contacted the publisher. Alhamdulillah, he had a few copies. So why not? So we flew over, me and Sheikh al-Qawm, because that's how we roll, and thought, let's pick it up and do a bit of book shopping whilst we're there. So I've bought back some interesting books. This is one. This is a fascinating book. Right, so it's about Sahih Bukhari. He's gone through a lot of research into show one, the criticisms that were pointed towards Bukhari, some really blasphemous hadith that are in Sahih Bukhari, but also a lot of work on the kind of manuscripts that are available. So for example, most of the copies, if not all the copies in Saudi, in Jamia, this is Malik Abdul Aziz. So in that university, I believe he has access to, and he does research there, and he kind of includes all the manuscripts and shows how these manuscripts are problematic because they're not as abundant. So he has an entire kind of list of all spans several pages, all the kind of manuscripts, what century they were written in. So you tend to find that the earliest complete copy of Sahih Bukhari emerges about 200 years after Imam Bukhari, as in that's the oldest copy we have today. It's about 200 years after him. And there's a lot of issues with his students because this stems from the factor that Imam Bukhari, as I highlighted last week, he, during the last few years of his life, was blacklisted. So nobody would take hadith from him, or very few people would dare take hadith from him. So he became very toxic and radioactive by no fault of his own. He was an amazing person, but sectarianism kind of dropped him in it. And so people kind of banned taking hadith from him. This complicates the problem further. So the students that took Bukhari from him, none of their copies are found. I mean, none of their copies do not go on, most of the reliable students, except one student whose name is Farabri, and he has none of the hadith scholars of his age comment about him. Like, he's not really known amongst them. Now, his students take Bukhari from him, but they openly say that his copy was incomplete. And we used to move hadith around, we would change chapter headings, we would do stuff, and they all have their own variations on this. So it's interesting, that whole, so I got hold of this book to add to my research. So inshallah, there will be a lot more coming on that in the future. Whilst I was there were some interesting books. I'll share some of them with you. This is a really fascinating book. It's once again written, it's published in Morocco. It's a kind of, it's a collection of a lot of different, I don't know if articles is the right word, but small booklets, if you like, dedicated to topics that are controversial. But I love the title, and it's dedicated. That's one of the discussions involved. As you can see, Ummi Kamilatu Aqlin wa Deen, that my mother, a complete woman of aql, of intellect and deen. And that's obviously said provocatively for the alleged hadith, which I don't believe to be a sahih hadith, which is a hadith that says that women are naqisatu aql wa deen, that they lack aql and lack deen. So this is a part of this article was or this booklet in amongst these kind of collection of responses, is that my mother, a woman complete in both intellect and deen. And it kind of goes on to shed his light on why this hadith is utterly unreliable, and I find that amazing. So that's something to, inshallah, you'll be hearing more of in the days to come. This was a little interesting book I picked up on the tartib, how the Quran has been organized. I thought, well, in terms of revelation and then the way it's been put together, some journals on Aqidah. This, once again, it's from that same publisher, to do with that was speaking about my mother, who is a complete woman in faith and intellect. This is another interesting book called Adhan al-An'am, that the ears of livestock. And what it is it's a kind of study into evolution and how that is, I believe, how that is compatible with Islam. So that was quite an interesting, I've got to, inshallah, take a look at this. But I tell you something, a quick glance at this made me think about, there's a verse that he brings to our attention at some point, as I was glancing through this. The verse of the Quran, that أَلَمْ يَأْتِ عَلَى الْإِنسَانِ حِينٌ مِنَ الدَّهْرِ, that has there not come upon insan a portion of time, لَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْئًا مَذْكُورًا, that he was not a mentioned thing. Now it's interesting that people generally translate that or interpret that to refer to that we were dead, that we did not exist. Dead, sorry, not a good translation, but we were non-existent. That and then we were brought into existence. But it's interesting that the way this author sheds light on that verse, and it seems to make more sense, that alam ya'ti alal insani, wouldn't it be then said differently, like maybe something like alam yamar, that has time not passed when insan, lam yakun shay'an madhkura, when insan was not. But it says alam ya'ti alal insani hinum min ad-dahr, that a time of age, did that time from age, from as in time as a whole, not pass over insan whilst he was not a thing to be mentioned? But that is interesting upon reflection, because it should have been the whole of the as in age, the whole time with a capital T has passed and insan did not exist. Unless, why did it say a portion of time passed when he was not a thing to be mentioned? Was it because that insan was still evolving? That's interesting. And at that stage, insan was not a thing to be mentioned. That is a very interesting kind of angle and something to be looked into. So here's another a book I picked up, people. This right in front of us is Abu Sulaiman al-Hafidh al-Khattabi's a brief commentary on the summary of Bukhari. The reason I got this is because he's a very early scholar who passes away in 388 Hijri, and he took Bukhari from one of the students of Imam Bukhari. His teacher took it from one of the students whose transmission is lost shortly after. Although this is an incomplete, it's only a summary, but it's just to kind of show, well, in case people argue that it is still found in its earlier transmissions. It isn't, because this is incomplete. It's a kind of summarized version, but it's interesting to see how he highlights differences as well. So I bought that. What else? I've got so many here, but I won't really go through all of these because it's just going to take forever. this is an interesting book being brought into print. It's the Mukhtasar of Abu Mus'ab al-Zuhri, who's a student of Imam Malik from Medina. So I thought, alright, in fiqh, why not, people? Why not? The tafsir, I picked this up. I never really had this before. Tafsir of Sheikh Rashid Rida, Tafsir al-Manar, who is a student of Muhammad Abdul. I thought, well, that'll be an awesome addition to my library, so why not? I put that there. Once again, Ilal al-Hadith by Ali ibn al-Madini. Something in what I've called Ilal al-Hadith as textual pathology, people. Textual pathology. So when you're looking at hidden kind of pathogens, Allah, copywriting these terms right there, people. Right, narratorial pathogens. That's what I'm talking about. But there was an interesting thing that I was looking at this hadith in here. There's a discussion on Al-Hasan and has he heard from the companion Abu Bakr. And there was an interesting discussion in this book, because although people like Ali ibn al-Madini said he had and Bukhari said he had, but scholars like Yahya ibn Ma'in said he never heard from Abu Bakr, and including Dar Qutni, who criticizes and says even though Bukhari has a narration from him saying he heard from Abu Bakr, a companion, where the Prophet, the famous hadith where the Prophet says to him when he hastens to pray that don't hasten next, like as in Zadakallah hirsan, may Allah increase you in ambition, but don't do that again, like don't come running, come calmly to the prayer. But what's interesting is how they quote here, people like Abul Walid al-Baji, the Maliki scholar, says that the Hasan in that hadith may actually be Hasan ibn Ali, the son of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh. So they're not even sure which Hasan it is. But what makes that more interesting is this is the same chain that is used for the hadith, that لَن يُفْلِحَ قَوْمٌ, that such a people will never be successful who make their leader a woman. And that is the same Hasan from Abu Bakr. So the discussion is, has he even ever heard from Abu Bakr? And there's a lot of debate in that. Right, people, I tell you what, no point going through any more of these. It's going to take forever. Let's take some of these questions. What's going down? What's going down, people? What's going down? Limited. What does that mean? Limited. Whoo, all right. Right, oh, I forgot. There's questions that have already been submitted. Why don't I look at them? One hadith, dislike drinking water. First thing, getting up, can you shed light? I'm not sure what that hadith is, where the Prophet disliked drinking water first thing. But any of these kind of hadith, by the way, are more to do with hygiene and etiquettes of like health and stuff like this. They're not about halal haram. Allah mentions in the Quran that He will not belittle any of His messengers. Sahih hadith would state otherwise. Yeah, there is a hadith in Sahih Bukhari, and it's in Sahih Muslim as well, about Moses alayhi salam, and basically it's a very disrespectful hadith which is blasphemous, but unfortunately many Muslims have been kind of fooled by it, and they feel that it's an authentic narration just because it happens to be in Bukhari. And the hadith basically states that why it's to do with the Israelites and how they would all kind of bathe together, and they would and Moses alayhi salam would bathe separately. So they used to discuss amongst themselves, why does Moses not bathe with us? Like, why doesn't he lie in here, as in this kind of water, wherever they were, with us? So they had this understanding that they used the term in the hadith that he was adar, which means that his testicles were swollen. And they use this, they say, oh, that's the reason he's embarrassed. And so the hadith goes on to say that, so when Moses came out one day, alayhi salam, he had his clothes on this rock, and he went to get his clothes, and the rock started running, and then Moses is running after the rock, and the rock is running, and he's running naked. And in Sahih Muslim as well, it mentioned, so they all looked at his genitals and said, oh, well, his testicles seem quite normal. And this is ridiculous. This is such a ridiculous statement. This whole hadith is fabricated. These are just stories from the Israelites that have crept into Islam. And, and Muslims have kind of endorsed them along the way. So that's one of them. You'll find other sometimes preposterous narrations. That hadith is very blasphemous against prophets, because Allah says about Musa alayhi salam that he was wajihan, he was wajih, like he was an honorable person. Allah had kept him an honorable person, not like this. And rocks running around with your clothes, and then Moses beats up the rock as though the rock is an intelligent thing, he's beating it up. Crazy stories that people believe, disrespecting our prophets, disrespectful. So that's, and you get other stories, by the way, like another very popular, let me tell you another very popular fabricated or mistransmitted hadith in Sahih Bukhari, which is this one about Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh caught the devil, and the devil taught him something. Ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. I mean, it completely contradicts the Quran and Sunnah, and it disrespects Islam. Because let's just take a look at this hadith. There's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Abu Hurairah that he had the wealth of zakat, which was to be distributed. So this is the wealth of the Muslims. It's like Baytul Mal, it's part of that. So it's like the Muslim treasury. And he asked Abu Hurairah to be stand guard over it, like have like night duty on it. So Abu Hurairah says that whilst I was doing that, a man came and he stole from this, and he steals something. So Abu Hurairah catches him, and he makes up some story about how his family are suffering and how they're really poor and things like this, and they're really suffering. So Abu Hurairah decides to let him have it. First of all, that is bang out of order, because it's not up to Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh to kind of dispense of the wealth from national treasury of the Muslims just because he feels. So he couldn't. This is right, but let alone put that aside. So he lets him have it. So the next day he comes to the Prophet, and the Prophet says, "Ya Abu Hurairah, did something happen last night?" And he says, yes, there was a man, now that you mention it, there was a man that came and he tried to steal, and I caught him, and he said his family was suffering. So I gave it to him. And the Prophet says to him, he's a liar. Let's check this out. He's a liar, kadhib, wa saya'ud. And watch, he's going to come back. And lo and behold, he comes back that night. So he comes again. He steals again, and Abu Hurairah catches him again. And then he tells Abu Hurairah the same story that, my family, I'm a poor person, my family. And Abu Hurairah again lets him take it. Like, look at this. So not only is he letting him take money for the second time, or not money, but things, food or whatever it is, but it's not Abu Hurairah's to give. But the Prophet has declared that that person is a liar. Yet Abu Hurairah still disregarding, let's say, what the Prophet is saying. And the Prophet has forewarned that, watch, he'll come back again. And he does come back again. And Abu Hurairah falls for it again. He gets duped again. Like, look how stupid this narration is. And then he comes the next day. The Prophet asks Abu Hurairah, hey, did something happen? And he says, yeah, actually, he came again. You were right. And he told me again. And I believed him again, and I gave him again. And then the Prophet says, he's a liar, watch, he will come back again. This is in Sahih Bukhari, by the way. So, and lo and behold, people, he comes back again. The thief, our addictive thief, he's on it. The pathological thief, he's back again. and he comes to steal, and this time Abu Huraira catches him again. And he says, listen, let me go. And he says, no, not going to let you go this time. And he says, okay, listen. Okay, check this. He says, okay, listen. I'll tell you what. If you let me go, I will teach you something about your religion that you don't know. I mean, first of all, just look at this offer. So let me get this right. This guy, who is a thief, who the Prophet has said is a liar, and the Prophet told you, yet you have once again, you've fallen for his thing again. The Prophet said it again, you've fallen for it again. Now this thief has come and he's saying to you, you're a companion of the Prophet. You've got access to the Prophet. But he's saying, I will teach you about your religion. So Abu Huraira says, okay, go on then, teach me. And he says, when you go to sleep, read Ayatul Kursi, and he teaches him something about Ayatul Kursi. And then Abu Huraira says, okay, and lets him go. So we've got a repetitive kleptomaniac and a thief who's just non-stop thieving from the Muslim treasury. Abu Huraira is allegedly in this hadith constantly falling for it. Like he's being duped constantly. And then on the final occasion, he's saying, oh, you're going to teach me about my religion. Oh, that's awesome. What is it that you're going to teach me? And he teaches him something about Ayatul Kursi, about before you go to sleep and read this. And then Abu Huraira comes to the Prophet and the Prophet says, hey, did something happen again? And he says, yes. He says, actually, he came and this time I caught him, and then he said he offered to teach me something about the religion. The Prophet said, oh, really? What did he say? And he said this about Ayatul Kursi. And the Prophet said, you know what? That was the devil. However, he told the truth on this occasion. I mean, how blasphemous is this hadith? Seriously. Let me get this right. What did Imam Malik say? Imam Malik said that there is nothing about this deen except the Prophet has taught us. Nothing about this deen except the Prophet has taught it to us. As in, there is no path to Jannah like worship and du'as and things like this that are set except the Prophet taught us. But here we need the devil people, to come and teach us about Islam. Right? And the Prophet ain't teaching them. The Prophet's saying, oh yeah, by the way, yeah, that's correct. I haven't taught it to you, by the way, but the devil's mentioned it. Oh yeah, he got that right. What? How blasphemous, disrespectful is this hadith? It shows Abu Huraira to be incredibly clumsy. It shows Abu Huraira to disobey the Prophet. It shows the Prophet to have not taught the people this dua. Rather, we needed the devil to come and teach us. Wow, it teaches the fact that somebody's thieving from the national treasury and the Prophet is letting it happen. It teaches the fact that the companion doesn't seem to be so fussed. He's falling for it every night. It's a mockery, people. Or as some Mulvis would say, mockery. Makri. This is a makri of the deen, So this is the kind of sometimes nonsense that has crept into our tradition. So we have to, this is why, be wary that these things go against the Quran, they go against the Sunnah, they go against our teaching of fiqh, they go against things like Imam Malik has highlighted, that the Prophet taught us, that all access, all rituals of this deen were taught to us by the Prophet. Okay, we don't need the devil to come and teach us. Those of them that want the devil to be their teacher, they're more than welcome. Right, so let's move on. Speaking of that, people, there was a meme that was going around, so I put it on Snapchat, where there's an interview between an interviewer and an interviewee. So it's about the devil. Sorry, it's about the Dajjal. It's about the Dajjal. So the interviewer in this meme, I didn't make the meme, by the way. People thought I made the meme, right? You're forgetting special ops and how governments do test their own. Behave. The Prophet wasn't doing a special ops. Right, so in this hadith, in this meme, the interviewer is asking, so he says, oh, so you're the Dajjal? And he says, yeah. And he says, you claim to be a god? And he says, yes. He says, so what are your capabilities? And he says, I can bring the dead back to life, I can make it rain, I can gather armies, I can do all this kind of stuff, miraculous stuff. So the interviewer says, so how come you haven't fixed your eye then? and he says, I never thought about that. That's a good question, by the way. So I put this on Snapchat. Some people got offended. They said, why you mock the Dajjal for? Why you mock the Dajjal in it? Mock the Dajjal. So I was like, Dajjal kya tumhara chacha lagta hai? Is the Dajjal your who is he of yours? Why are you so offended? The Dajjal is getting mocked. People get so offended. This one person messaged me and he said, oh, brother, why are you mocking the Dajjal? I was like, is he your chacha or something? Why am I mocking the Dajjal? He goes, oh, it's a valid difference of opinion. I said, what? I can't mock him. I'll mock the Dajjal all I want. Why can't I mock him? Why is he a good person? So, what's interesting is I asked this person, I said, look, well, what makes you think all differences are always valid and respectable? I obviously don't believe in the Dajjal. Those people who do believe in him, fine, that's their choice. But I never made that meme anyway. But yes, I find it funny. And if you want to mock the Dajjal, even if he exists, you can mock him. There's nothing special about the Dajjal. He's not a saint, He's this obviously to me is a mythical character that came in from Christianity, but to other people who want to accept him, he's not a good guy. you can mock him. It's not. And the interesting thing is, I said, well, do you get as equally worked up about those hadith that are blasphemous towards our Prophet? And the person said, I do. I said, what about these hadith like in Bukhari and Muslim that claim that our Prophet had sexual relationships with a child? Do you not get offended by this? And it's amazing how, like, this goes to show, like these people, like they said, oh, I believe that's a respectable difference of opinion. Honestly, I lost my, I just totally lost it. I immediately blocked that person. Anybody that tells me that's a respectable position, I do not want to hear that. Right? So, because people like that, to me, have betrayed Allah and His Messenger. So these kind of things, anybody that's openly, I'm not talking about the Dajjal now, I'm talking about things that people that openly, Muslims that openly promote that the Prophet had sexual relationship with a child, then they'll openly say that, that they openly teach this, Muslims that openly teach this. I don't mean people like the common people who don't know, but Muslims that are activists, that are going about openly teaching stuff like this. They have betrayed Allah and His Messenger. And honestly, they've either got some warped understanding of Islam, but I find it difficult to believe that they are genuine in their love for Allah and His Messenger. I find that difficult to believe. That anybody that says that openly teaches things like that, and their justification that people in the past said it, but people in the past are dead. You can't call them to change their position. But you are alive. So no point saying, but so-and-so who died 500 years ago, but he's dead. So it doesn't matter now. But you are still alive. How on earth are you saying this nonsense? So this is the kind of, so these things really, really rile me. If you want to, I want to get worked up sometimes. This is the kind of thing. So anyway, right, let's move on to some of these questions, people. What's going on? What's going on? What questions have we got trickling in? Right, the Sunni defense, I'm going to come to that. I've got that here. So let's take a few questions because I've not taken any questions. And people are going to think, what the hell? We've posted questions on his status. And ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué? Why has he not responded to any of them? So let's see, people. Let's see. Ya salam. All right. How should we discard papers that have Allah's name or other venerated words in Arabic on them? You can burn them if you like. You can incinerate them. So if you have old mushafs, Quran, stuff like this, old copies of the Quran or that's become, and you need to kind of safely do away with them, you can incinerate them. Or if you have words that are like Allah's name and stuff like, oh, I believe in this day and age you can shred them if they become totally, like, by shredding them they become completely imperceptible. Not like, there's different types of shredders, so obviously some just kind of leave it so you can still kind of make out words or letters, and some completely obliterate everything. So if you can completely obliterate it, alhamdulillah, that's fine. Is it necessary to pay zakat whilst living in the UK, especially considering that the high tax rate and the fact that our taxes in a way go towards social programs? If you do advise to continue paying zakat, do we have to pay on savings? Or, you see, zakat is not really for kind of current accounts. It's more to do with savings. You see, the issue is this, people. We haven't truly kind of caught up in our fiqh. So in the past, zakat was really to do with stuff like livestock. It was to do with produce from farming, etc. These were the real things zakat was all to do with. It wasn't really to do with gold, silver and stuff like this. It wasn't really, because gold and silver weren't really people's kind of wealth. The common people, their wealth in abundance wasn't like gold and silver. That was their kind of day-to-day earnings by them trading other stock that they had. So zakat really came to deal with these kind of things. In fact, we don't even have a Sahih Hadith speaking about how much zakat we should give from gold. We don't actually have anything that's Sahih. Right, so this is great. Somebody just trying to, who the hell is trying to call me? Right, so we don't really have anything Sahih. There's some hadith about silver and stuff like this, and then there's a lot of analogy, and there's weak hadith which the scholars have just accepted because they needed something for gold, and they kind of just set the standard, and then everybody accepted it, and I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem, because I understand they just needed rules and law and order and stuff like this. But the reality is there's really no Sahih hadith about how much gold you should have, and then you start giving zakat and stuff like this. So I think zakat really got formulated it's interesting because zakat definitely, obviously, is there in the time of the Prophet, no doubt about that. Does it get more, does the structure of zakat become kind of more, what's the word, very kind of mechanical after the Prophet? And I suppose I would argue that it probably does. That it's probably after the Prophet that zakat becomes a bit more mechanical and very kind of, it takes a lot of detail that perhaps that didn't exist before, in that sense. So this is hence a lot of this confusion. Where can we give zakat? Where can't we give zakat? Stuff like this emerges over the ages, as generations kind of pass and different rulings. But zakat, right, really is. Whoa! Somebody just. Who is this? Sorry, people. Some person is just. Anyway, right. So that's. So today, how do we deal with zakat today? you can just give, you can have a savings account. The way I would rule is how people like Ibn Ashur, the great Maliki legend, and these people said it, is a bit like the Hanafi method, as in once you have a lump sum that exceeds the nisab, the kind of threshold, then provided that minimum threshold lasts right throughout the year, then you can just pinpoint a month in the year that right. I'm going at this again, people. I don't know what happened then. Right, guys, I don't know what happened there. I'm just gonna just one moment, folks. No idea. Is this live now? Let me see. Just trying to share it. Come on. Another. You see, that's actually a good. There it is. Right, a lot of my mates have actually said, that's a good point. They've said that I think I'm living proof that the evil eye doesn't exist. Because if it did exist, I think I would definitely have been afflicted. Right, so all right, cool. Evil eye, yep. Let's get things moving. Right, what are the questions, folks? What's going on? What's going on? The devil did that? Hell no. You see, in my life, these things like sorcery, wizardry, superstition, they play very... These things don't really exist in my kind of worldview. So what's going on, folks? Let's take some questions. Salam, could you explain the allegations against Quran compilation during Uthman? Answered me. I don't know what that means. How do you know which hadith we can accept or not? Right, okay, that's a very good question. The hadith people, you see, when we have a hadith, there's a few things. We need to see, does it clash with reason? The three principles, yeah? Does it clash with reason? Does it go against the established sources like the Quran? Does it go against the established Sunnah? 3, does it uproot an Islamic principle? Provided it doesn't, there's no problem here, the chain is fine, then we can go with it. Alhamdulillah. What's that about Dawah man and the... Right, okay, yeah, I did see this clip. Ya salam, people, ya salam. So I saw this, somebody sent me this clip about, there's 3 kind of preachers. It was actually shared by the Atheist Republic on Facebook. And they were saying, they were having a field day. So it said like, these guys, they were talking in this clip, in this brief clip, about YouTube, hijabi YouTubers. So hijabi YouTubers, yeah. And they were saying that this is sick. Like, how can man and mans let their women, how can these women be YouTubing, these hijabi women, that they are, you know, men are going all astray, and then so in between, right? It's past the watershed, people. So I'm just quoting what they're saying, right? So in between, he says, I know somebody personally. He says, I know somebody who said that he'd masturbated over a hijabi YouTuber. I don't know what's more problematic. Is that, okay, that or the fact that you know them? I mean, who are these kind of people that you know? What the hell is wrong with like this? You're in a day and age where the internet is widely available, and these kind of friends of you, and these are all like grown men. They're not like some kind of uncontrollable kids that are like kind of like, I don't know. These are like grown up men, and he's saying, yeah, I've known somebody personally who's done this. Can you think, well, what the hell? That would have been one awkward conversation. It's like, or bro, what you been up to? Well, funny you should say that. Well, I got kind of carried away this afternoon. Yep. What do you mean? Well, you see, I was on YouTube. And I kind of saw this hijab. Hijab? Right, so this is the... I mean, what is wrong with these kind of people? Seriously. And don't these guys realize that them discussing this is making a further mockery of this deen? I honestly don't get it. And the funny thing is that during their discussion, it's only a few minutes. By the way, the comments were awesome. The comments that the atheists had going on there, oh my God. I think I almost had a heart attack laughing. I just couldn't. I found them so hilarious. But and they quote this hadith in there. So during this discussion, these three guys, they say, you don't understand. This is from the ghaira. This is from the ghaira. That protective jealousy in Islam. He says, you don't. And there's a hadith of, I believe he quotes the one from, is it Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, or he quotes it from a companion that he says that, about finding the man with his wife and he would kill him. And the Prophet says, innaka rajulun ghayur, that you are a person with ghira, but I have more ghira than you, and Allah has more ghira than me and you combined. This hadith, by the way, they're completely quoting this out of context. This hadith has got nothing to do with this. This hadith was not about promoting ghira. This hadith was because that guy actually, the discussion was that the Prophet was saying that you need to bring witnesses. You can't throw allegations at women. And this person gets it because some person had claimed that he actually saw somebody with his wife, but he got away. So this is the backdrop to what's going on. And this companion says, if I found somebody, I would just attack them. And the Prophet's condemning him by saying, you can't do that. And even though you might have jealousy, but I'm prohibiting you, but I've got more of this kind of concern, this ghira, than you have. And Allah has more than us, meaning that to safeguard people's lives and their well-being comes first. It's paramount. You can't say, well, even if, the Prophet says, even if you found them, you still can't attack them. Now they've completely turned it on its head to say, well, this hadith is about promoting ghira, and this kind of what they're translating as protective right there. Yasser Kasana's comment I'm not going to read aloud because right, so because the hadith is not talking about ghira like that, so they're translating as protective jealousy. But that's not what you see. Their actions, protective jealousy, this ghira, is when you protect their honor, when you protect them when they're defenseless, when you stand up, even if you're fighting for them. It's not about, it doesn't, what they're translating it, not the wording, but they're translating the meaning as insecure paranoia. That's all it is. It's just a man who's insecure about his wife. That, oh my God, why did a guy look at, oh my God, why did you look at her? Why did you ask? Like they give the question that somebody, he says, if somebody said, they ask you. And I accept that, look, cultures vary. In many cultures, people wouldn't ask. I accept it would be weird in certain cultures to just say, so bro, how's your wife? People would find that, because if that's not your general cultural practice, you would find that a bit strange. I accept that. Or to say, well, so how's your sister? And in many cultures, we don't do that. And I accept that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a cultural practice. But he said that, genuinely, somebody asked me once, oh, how you doing? How's your wife? How's everything? And I said to him, bro, don't ask about a man's wife. I thought, well, if they said it like that, like, how are you doing? How's your wife? How's your family? What the hell? Why are you acting like an insecure, paranoid? Like, that's just weird, man. Like this, you see, this kind of stuff is not Islamic at all. That's just to coat over your insecurity by using this hadith, which has got nothing to do with that. Right, so, right, what is right, what are we looking at? What are some questions? What's going on? All right, so we've had this. People have asked me to respond. There's been another video. These videos, there's been another. She's a lovely Reva. Sorry, I mean, what? I don't know what I'm not going to read that aloud. Right, so, there's been another video, as there always are, against me. It's always fun and games. So, the video, let me just deal with this for a moment, and I'll come back to some of the questions. Video was by our lovely Wahhabi defense. The Wahhabi Sunni defense. They've done another video. Koi rabta nahi Masood Mushtaq. Rabta hai yaar. Right, there's been a video by Sunni, I say Sunni loosely, Wahhabi Sunni defense, where so he's saying that, oh, I haven't answered this question. He's highlighted in this video saying, look, in my video about the video declaring marital rape haram, in that video he says, I've quoted something amongst the many quotes. I'm going to come to this. He says that these quotes were from some forum and they were misrepresented, so they're not actually accurate. Okay, so right, well, my brother, let's take a look at what is going on this way. This poraki. So just to summarize, there's a video, you can check my video, it's on YouTube. It's called that marital rape is haram in Islam, or if you type that in, marital rape haram, it should come up. But under there I explain, in the video I explain how rape is categorically haram, including using religion to justify the rape. So if a person is emotionally blackmailing or religiously blackmailing a woman to rape her, that is still rape. So I've explained that is categorically haram. So a husband, just as, like, let's say a husband is going to beat up his wife and beat her up if she says no to sex, that is clearly rape. Now, if he's going to say, oh, I'm not going to beat you up, but Allah is going to punish you after you die, you see, that is no less rape. That's just like saying, in other words, a deferred beating. So that's just threatening her still, because it's still a threat, but it's a threat with a deferred punishment. So it's still haram. categorically. Now, right, so first of all, there is a hadith. And I've done a whole, so what I would advise is people, when they get a moment, please go check out my video, because it's over half an hour. I do a complete breakdown of how that is coercion, that is haram, and no, the hadith is not true. And to say that the Lord is angry because you ain't getting sex is ridiculous. You seriously overestimate. Talk about self-aggrandizement like that. I don't know. Is that a metaphor for like the Lord down there? Because is that what you mean, that the Lord is angry? Lord is angry. Is this like some kind of like a nickname that you've got going on? Because there's no way on earth that God is going to be angry about you not having sex. Okay, I'm being real with you, right? So you seriously got an ego issue going on, because that is not true by any measure, no matter how much you think about yourself. So, right now, there's this hadith which is weak. I believe it's unacceptable utterly. It clashes with the Quran, it clashes with the authentic Sunnah, clashes with the principles of Islam. And the hadith is إِذَا بَاتَتِ الْمَرْأَةِ هَاجِرَةَ فِرَاشِ زَوْجِهَا, that if a woman stays away, abandons, like she stays away from the bed, لَعْنَتْهَا الْمَلَائِكَةِ, the angels will curse her. In another hadith, that the Lord is angry with her, حَتَّى تُصْبِحْ, either until morning or until she comes back. The Lord, Lord, which Lord? No. Lord, Lord is angry. This is right. So this is a new. Some Lord can be used for many things. Like it can be used for, like a woman at home can be called Rabbatul Bayt, the Lordess of the house, and so he could be using this as a metaphor. Right, so now I went through this hadith and I showed, and I won't go through the whole breakdown again, but I demonstrated how this hadith is not reliable. I read out the wordings of the hadith, I quoted it from, it is in Bukhari, it is in Muslim, it is in Abu Dawood, it is in Darmi, it is in Musnad of Ahmad, it is in all of these narrations. I showed the several problems with these chains. I showed that how these chains mainly rely on, they seem to come down mainly relying upon two kind of tabi'een. You've got Al-A'mash, and it also relies on Qatada as well. And the hadith is transmitted predominantly through Abu Hurairah radiallahu an. But these two people are mudallisin, that's people who kind of omit other weak, they omit people in the chain. So if they say an, which means from, without saying I heard from, they just say so-and-so said. They don't say he said it to me or I heard him say. If they speak like that, like vague, an is a vague term. If they use vague terms, then their hadith becomes problematic. So I mentioned that. I also mentioned how this clashes with the verse of the Quran, that ashiruhunna bil ma'ruf, that you have to treat women with kindness, that Allah says you either with them or you separate gracefully, how the Prophet ﷺ always taught kindness. I showed that how, so all of these narratives, how there is no coercion in Islam, all of these kind of things I went through. Now, okay, our Wahabi brothers, right, so he's pointed out, first of all, I'd like to highlight our Sunni defense brothers. They pointed out that during all of this during my analysis and evaluation of this hadith, I highlighted three names, which he says, which were from, I obtained from a forum that misrepresented the quotes and therefore they're inaccurate. Okay. So first of all, I want to say, thank you, shukran, for highlighting that. Muchas gracias, mi hermano al-Wahabi. First of all, no, we should be grateful when people point things out. Alhamdulillah. Man lam yashkurin nas, lam yashkurillah. Whoever is not grateful to people is not grateful to Allah. to the Lord, right? So then I want to highlight that, look, these quotes or these names, I mentioned with them what they'd said. Okay. I then immediately, if you watch my clip, which they quite conveniently stopped at that point, if you watch my clip, I go on. I don't stop there. I carry on. These clips, these quotations, I do not take as my judgment. I do not take as my judgment. So one of these quotations come down to two things. One, that this person, Al-A'mash, is a kadhab, is a liar. Two, he's muttaham fi dinihi, right? That he's somebody whose deen is problematic. Now, I go on to say immediately after that why Al-A'mash is problematic. I do not say because he's a liar. I do not say because his deen is a problem. I say Al-A'mash is problematic because he's a mudallis and there is an'ana in this chain. So you can watch what I say. I immediately after that go on to say this. So as far as these quotes being in a forum, let's say misrepresented, shukran, okay, they're misrepresented. I appreciate that you've highlighted that. So his conclusion, by the way, his conclusion was, because these, let's say these three quotes, these three names, and this quote coming down to him being a liar, or him being accused that his deen was problematic, his religion was problematic, that these things are from a forum which is misrepresented. Therefore, Abu Layth, by the way, I love the way, they don't say Layth. Abu Layth. Abu Layth is one of two. He's either he's either a Dajjal, he's either an Antichrist, or he's just an utter Jahil who's absolutely wrong in what he's saying. So, okay, let's go to what I've said. Why don't you highlight very clearly that I'm wrong in saying Al-A'mash is a mudallis? I'm wrong. Highlight it. Say it. That I'm wrong in saying that A'mash is a mudallis. Say it that I'm wrong in the hadith that I've quoted, the takhrij that it's found in these books. Am I wrong? No, they'll say, no, you're absolutely right. It is in those books. Am I wrong in reading the chains that it was A'mash from Abu Hazim, from Abu Hurairah? Say, no, that is right. That is right, Abu Layth. I'd say, am I wrong in mentioning that it comes down primarily to these two rawis? Say, no, this is not wrong, this one, my brother. Say, am I wrong in highlighting that Ibn al-Mubarak and his criticism of Al-A'mash? Am I wrong in what Ali ibn al-Madini or in Tahdhib al-Kamal, that the amount of tadlis Al-A'mash has done, that he's omitted names, that Al-Ala'i has mentioned that yudallisu an al-du'afa, Ibn Abd al-Bar has mentioned yudallisu an al-du'afa, that from weak narrators he would omit them. Am I wrong? Am I wrong, my brother? So they say, no. Am I wrong in my conclusion in saying that this hadith has a mudallis and it's an'ana? Am I wrong, brother? Why don't you just openly say it's wrong? But this one, no. This one you cannot do. But they would say, no, you're not wrong. So I say, okay, am I... So what's the problem, my brother? What's the problem? They say the problem is you're a Dajjal. The problem is you're a Dajjal. So I don't know what's a comeback to that. I'm asking, like, right, so am I wrong in every... So is all of this wrong then? Have I lied in all of this? Is this what... what I've based the conclusion on, my own conclusion that he's a mudallis, what these people have said, these names, Ibn Abd al-Bar, al-Dhahabi, all these names I've quoted saying he's a mudallis, the Ilal of Tirmidhi, all of these things, are these wrong? Say, nah, brother. So what's the problem, brother? Problem is you're the Dajjal. Ya salam. Seriously. You see, look, this is the problem, this is the problem. you know, whilst Abu Layth is here highlighting that you ask these people, do you have a problem with rape going on? The marital rape. So they don't seem to have a problem with that. Okay. Our Bahraini, Gulf Arab brothers, you know, the Arab brothers, you know, this, not all, this particular brother, right? So they don't seem to have a problem with the rape. They don't seem to have a problem with such nonsense being attributed to the Prophet. They don't seem to have a problem with this going against the verse of the Quran about coercion and all of these things. They have no problem whatsoever. They don't seem to attack what I've highlighted as the actual criticism, the actual conclusion of what I've said. Attack that. Oh, you, by the way, in between you said these names, but these names were misrepresented on a forum. Okay, did I rely on those names? Did I rely on those things? Did I go with what? Did I call A'mash a kadhab? Did I say his religion was a problem? Did I say these? Did I go with that as the reason to debunk this hadith? No, brother. I said he was a mudallis. But but you must either be a dajjal or either be a jahil. So this is the problem. This is what we're dealing with. So I've been asked to comment again. I've commented now. Look, if you would like to show that this chain is absolutely authentic, then do so. Show it to me. Show me an unquestionably uncritical chain allowing this kind of nonsense of marital rape. Show me, and I will then take it to task. But this is, you know, they just, oh, we've asked, this is the BS of Abu Layth, the BS. You know, this is where the research is one thing and the result is another. You know? In fact, there's a story I remember. Somebody told me, you know, like a subcontinental scholar from the subcontinent. He said once there was somebody doing some research. So he was researching flies. And he was trying to show the contrast between sometimes research, the investigation, and the result. So he had this fly, and what he would do is he would pull, like he'd obviously trap this fly around, he'd check it out, investigate it, then he'd pluck one of the wings, and then he'd say, Uro, Uro, like he'd tell you to fly, fly, fly. So it only have one wing, so it kind of flap around, like kind of like all bent and everywhere. And then what he did is he plucked both wings, and the fly would just stay there, and he'd say, Uro, fly, fly. And the fly wouldn't fly. So he said, so his result was, the conclusion, so that was the investigation, the result was, he said, ek par iska, if you pull out one wing, this fly, makhi teri ho jati hai, you know, if flies bent. But if you pull out two wings, you pluck two wings, ye makhi beri ho jati hai. The fly becomes deaf. So that's where you have a huge difference between an investigation and the result. So he's assuming that the fly is now deaf. So this is the thing. So because that he's saying that this was misrepresented on a particular forum, so now Abu Layth must be an antichrist. He must be a Dajjal. That's the natural conclusion that just follows on. The natural conclusion isn't that, yes, all these hadith and let's deal with the tadlis and let's bring a chain that's unquestionably uncritical. The natural conclusion is, okay, because that forum had this or whatever, this is misrepresented, these names, which you didn't rely on, by the way, but still, the natural conclusion is you must be an antichrist. Gotta love him. Mwah! Oh, Gio. I gotta do it. You know the Pakistani style, they go. Haters, haters. I tell you, haters. Yeah, you gotta see, they have this this drive to them. You gotta be grateful for your haters as well, to be fair. You gotta be grateful. Because, to be honest with you, it's like somebody said the other day about a hater. And I said, look, let's be honest. I said to the guy, if you were anything like that person, astaghfirullah, I'm not saying it. People were saying it. You know, I'm not saying he was ugly. People are saying it. Zalim dunya. But if you were anything like these people, like I'm just saying, this person we were discussing the other day, who was kind of hating, I said, let's just face it, let's be honest. If you were like that, let's just use the term mahroom, deprived. You too would hate the world. So you have to have this, you have to give your sympathy to these haters. You have to say, haters, Allah ni marzi. Right, let's move on, people. Let's take some questions. Right, let's take some questions. So I hope that answers. So I await. Look, I hope that answers that question to do with this. As to him saying those names were, that's not accurate. First of all, shukran, bahut dhanyawad, okay? Right, I appreciate you highlighting that. Much appreciated. Those names won't be, at least it's good to know. But I never relied on them anyway. And why don't you actually criticize what I did rely on and show me a clear chain that justifies your ridiculous assertion that rape is permitted, which is an obnoxious, atrocious statement. Anyway, let's move on. Right, can you do... This is Mariam. Thank you again for my shahada. All right, Mariam, you're doing it. Bienvenidos. Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome. And it's an absolute honor. Can you do wudu with hair gel? Of course you can. Just wipe over, people. Wipe over. Can we apply cream that contains alcohol and pray? Yes, of course. By the way, that sorry, my mind, by the way, is always on humor mode, so I have to be careful, right? But yes, you can apply cream that has alcohol. It's absolutely fine. Okay, and that alcohol isn't that same kind of drinking alcohol. Hair coloring, is it okay? Hell yeah, hair coloring is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Right, Nola Burgess says fake laugh. Fake person. Okay, Nola. Fake. What you doing on this fake person's fake live transmission? Adios, amiga. Adios. Right. View on Shadiliya. Who did Abraham alayhi salam take for sacrifice? That's an interesting question. What do you think about Abu Ibrahim's racist remarks? I've answered this in last week's. Or was it the week before? So you can check that then. So, sobriety is overrated, people. That reminds me of a poem. All right, poem time. It reminds me of a poem. Teri mast nigahi ka bharam rakh lunga. That he says that because your eyes are so known for their intoxication that I will keep their reputation. Okay. Teri mast nigahi ka bharam rakh lunga. होश आया भी तो कह दूंगा मुझे होश नहीं. That even if I do become sober, I'll say I'm not sober. Just to keep that reputation of those intoxicating eyes. No coke. There's a bit mixed in there. Right, so Right, what are we looking at, people? What are we looking at? Let's take some rapid round kind of questions. What was your... Somebody said you missed my question. What was your question? Right. ¿Cuál es tu pregunta? ¿Cuál es tu pregunta, mi amigo? What is your question? What is your question? You keep saying you missed my... Tell me the question. I don't know what the question... interest taking or giving in countries like India. Watch my clip. It's on YouTube about things like interest and riba. I've answered how I don't believe these things to necessarily be haram in the current system, because I don't believe that that the maqasid were not aimed at this system. So you have to watch that whole... It's about 40 minutes long. It's a whole explanation. What are your views on the Shadhiliya? Shadhiliya are a Sufi group, a Sufi order. I'm not really part of any Sufi orders, as you can see. I'm just a wanderer in my own right, that's all. I'm not really part of... people who want to be part of Sufi orders, I don't condemn them. To me, though, I kind of see all of this more as folklore religion. I see this as kind of a need that common people kind of have to make sense of religion and stuff like this. And it's not really authentic from the Quran or Sunnah, but, chalo chalta hai yaar. No, don't worry about it. It's all good. It's all good. What are your views on Sudais? Yeah, I did share that video of some person criticizing Sudais. You see, the thing is that these people have for too long kind of preached their ways. It's not... Look, I don't have some kind of hatred against Sheikh Sudais. I don't, right? I love his recitation. I totally love his style. But, these sermons, these things, referring constantly to Jews and Christians as, like Al-Khanazir and Qarada and, monkeys and pigs and all this kind of stuff. It's for years, they've instilled the hatred for people in the hearts of Muslims. And even now, look what they're doing. All these kind of things, bombing Yemen, and their support for this kind of stuff. It's atrocious. So, yes, I was glad to hear that how somebody had confronted him. Right, so you guys should follow the Ahlul Bayt Tariqah. I'm not really interested in any Sufi orders, to be honest with you. To me, it's more about reason, okay? And through that, I find my spiritual consciousness, if you like, okay? So, was Prophet Adam the first person on earth? What does person mean? Like hominin? Of course not. He wasn't the first hominin, but he is the father of humanity as we know it today. Okay, all of humanity, Adam alayhi salam, is the father of humanity. But were there hominins before Adam? Of course they were. I mean, that's my understanding, that there would have been, all the other, whether it's going to be Homo erectus, Homo, Homo, all of these, not Homo in that sense, Heidelbergensis, Homo africanus, Homo, all these kind of different ones you're going to get. I believe Homo agaster, Homo habilis, all of these, Neanderthal, even old Homo sapiens, but pre-cognitive revolution, I believe that they were there, but Adam alayhi salam was the first with the cognitive kind of revolution. Are dinosaurs mentioned in the Quran? Come on. What is Allah going to say to people about, like, but he's going to mention like T-Rex and things like this in the Quran? What on earth is all of that about? Like, obviously these things are not mentioned in the Quran, but they don't need to be mentioned in the Quran. Why did Uthman burn the Quran? He never... You see, that sounds very hostile when you say it like that. He synchronized the script of the Quran, and then he said, in order not to have anything that strays from this, let's safely dispose of any other copies. So we have these, and then he made several, some say 7 or other copies. He sent them to the main capital kind of cities and had them kind of print them up, like as in not print but write from them. So that's, but when you say like, why did Uthman burn the Quran, it sounds very hostile. He never burnt the Quran like, hey, where's the Quran, let me set it on fire. That's how did he dispose of copies that they felt contained maybe inaccuracies. That was the question. Nola is back saying orange juice. Muchas gracias, Nola. Muchas gracias. So what's going down, people? What's going down? Right, so how do we, I don't know what, let's take some rapid round questions, then we'll wrap this up, people. We'll wrap this up. Oh, somebody asked about Noman Ali Khan. I shared a clip of Noman Ali Khan, Ustad Noman Ali Khan. It was an excellent clip, really. I totally loved it, I'm going to be honest. It's probably, I think it's about 5 minutes long. It's an interview in Urdu. Now, he's asked the question that what does Allah want from us? And he begins by saying, you know, had have you asked me this a decade earlier, my response would have been entirely different. That my response then would have been very guilt-laden, all doom and gloom, all kind of that Allah wants us to worship and this, and you know, he wants to burden us with this responsibility, and we're never going to really, everybody's going to burn in the akhirah, and it's a very kind of doom, we're guilty and we're full of sin and we're going to suffer and everybody's going to suffer, you know, this kind of very, he said, I had this kind of image. And he said, well, now 10 years later, how he'd kind of moved on, and how the Quran, he saw in it messages of just hope, and how Allah is saying how he's built paradise not just for Muslims but for insan, for humanity. How this is a caravan of hope basically, and the message is one of compassion and hope. And so I found it really amazing. I mean, if you do understand Urdu, do have a watch of it. It's not right. How are punishments from Sharia decided? You see, my understanding is the Sharia religion, the laws was simply a social remedy based on the social understandings available. So Islam never introduced any kind of punishment or any kind of things like that that were completely alien to the culture that it came to. Rather, it just placed parameters on the kind of punishments and sanctions that those people already had. So the Arabs already had things like stoning and stuff like, or the Jewish, that came from the Jewish thing, but the Arabs, it was not completely unfamiliar to them. Okay, so these kind of things, it just placed parameters, like they would already cut limbs and stuff like this, so it came with just with their whatever practices were, but it just placed some parameters. And with time, as I believe, with time, and as Abul Qasim al-Burzali and many other Maliki scholars said, with time, as the punishments of civilizations change, so should the Sharia and the laws. So that's, I've got a video on that, on trajectory hermeneutics. You can check it out on YouTube, okay. Oh, by the way, that reminds me, mentioning the word stoning, reminds me of two things. One, there's a... so would I believe for fornication there would be stoning or lashing? Hell no. I don't believe that at all in 2018. Of course not. 600 years ago, Abul Qasim al-Burzali said there wouldn't be that in his time. That's 600 years ago. What about in our time? In post-modernity, you wouldn't obviously do things like that, because that would make the religion become tarnished. So, and we've got to really question a lot of things as well. There's too much work to be done, to be honest. It's really difficult. So there's a lot, even concepts need to be questioned. For example, even relationships. And you've got to understand something as well. Even zina and all of these things need to be kind of looked at. And what is it? What were marriages? So Aisha radiallahu anha says in a hadith that there were marriages were of, for example, there were 4 different types, and these became obsolete. And the only thing that remained halal was the relationship that the kind of marriage structure that people have today. That was in her day and age. meaning the kind of nikah that was there. So what's interesting is how are relationships then perceived over the ages, and how does ijtihad have to take them into consideration, because one would believe that it ought to. So where does that kind of leave a lot of things? And it's interesting. I'm just saying that people so there's a lot of work, basically, a lot of kind of ijtihad has to go into things, a lot of evaluation. I think today people, there's a lot of emotions when it comes to certain things, but they're not really thinking about what Islam actually says. They're just being emotional, and there's a lot of culture. That's what there is. But yeah, so right, coming back to stoning, I was going to say there's two things that come to my mind. One, there's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari, once again another fabricated, misrepresented hadith about a companion saying, "Oh, I saw monkeys fornicate, and one of them fornicated, and then the monkeys got together and stoned that monkey." I mean, that is, you gotta be joking, right? These kind of things are like, animals don't do like whether animals were pelting each other or not is not an act of stoning, okay, because they were fornicating like that. It doesn't, the animal kingdom doesn't work like that, okay? It doesn't work like, I mean, yes, they will attack each other, they will pelt each other, but it doesn't work with these kind of imaginative realities like fornication. Fornication is an imaginative reality in the sense of, as is marriage. Marriage is part of the imaginative realm. It's not actually, it doesn't actually exist. I mean, it's something that's in our minds. It's an institution that we have built up as part of the imaginative realm. Religion has recognized it for its kind of purposive function in society. But to assume animals think like that and they have constructs like fornication, marriage, stuff like this is absurd, right? So these kind of things, you see, it's, once again, it ridicules religion, right? Animals, monkeys, they realized one monkey had fornicated, so they got together and they they stoned the monkey to death. Like, what on earth are you talking about? Like, yes, I'm not saying monkeys may pelt each other with stones. They may even kill each other. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but it's not based on these concepts, okay? It's not like a conceptual like thing going on, like, hey, you know, that monkey has violated the social norm of relationships, therefore we need to sanction that monkey under code so and so, which divine justice of let's stone that monkey to death. That is absurd. I mean, what the hell? Talk about, see, that's another example. So anyway, that came to my mind. So that's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari, which obviously is false. And I'm not saying, you see, I'm not saying that whether somebody saw monkeys throwing stones at each other has to be false. That obviously would happen all the time. Monkeys would pelt each other. But all this narrative is nothing but creative writing. Like, animals don't have these constructs like this, okay? They don't think like that, okay? But this is exactly why we need to fine comb religion from these cobwebs, because Allah and His Messenger are free from this kind of stuff. The other thing I wanted to say about stoning was, you know, people have asked me about this verse, and I've seen some ex-Muslims and atheists also refute Muslims on this verse of the Quran, that وَلَقَدْ زَيَّنَّا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا وَجَعَلْنَاهَا مَصَابِيحَ, that how the sky has been kind of lit up with lamps, with the stars and stuff like this. وَجَعَلْنَاهَا رُجُومًا لِلشَّيَاطِينَ, and this is interesting, we have made them, now some people have translated this, they've translated this as rujuman, that they fire at the shayateen as they go up, devils, as they try to permeate through these heavens, they get hit at with comets and things like this. That's not what this verse of the Quran is saying. Okay, that is not what this verse of the Quran is saying. Okay, rajam, yes, can mean stoning, But rajam here, as you see certain mufassirin, I believe amongst them, I believe Ibn Ashur mentions it. Other people have mentioned it as well. It's not just him. If you read through diverse tafasir, rajam also means a guess. Like, you know, when you guess something, it's like people will say a shot in the dark. Like you take a wild guess. A wild guess was also referred to as a rajam because it was just a throw. Like they say in Urdu as well, penk raha hai. Penku. Maybe penku or ye bhi penku. So this thing of like just throwing, of just, it's just what a random shot, is rajam. It's a guess. So as the poet said in the Jahiliyyah poetry, when he says that this is truth what we tell you, وَمَا هُوَ عَنْهَا بِالْحَدِيثِ الْمُرَجَّمِ. And it is not, this isn't just guesswork, we're not just chatting it, in other words. This is what we are telling you is factual. So here Allah says that this sky that you see as lamps, and people say, well, you know, the stars ain't in the sky, but Allah is addressing the people as they see it from their perspective. Now people see these things as like these kind of majestic lamps that have kind of decorated the sky with all this glory. And yet, and Allah allows, if people want, He allows them. That lish-shayateen, the people who are astray, the devils, and this shayateen al-ins, from insan, the shayateen, we have shayateen amongst us, they use this as guesswork to predict the future. Rujuman lish-shayateen. That these shayateen, they look at these stars, and through their kind of astronomy, through astrology and things like this, they try to predict future and luck and stuff like this. Rujuman lish-shayateen. That's what they are. That is what this verse of the Quran means. It doesn't mean, oh, the jinn go up and comets kind of strike at them and stuff like that. It doesn't mean that at all. So yes, we have to be careful in our tafasir, because if we don't, people will, they will obviously use that as an opportunity to ridicule Allah, His Messenger, this religion, and we have a responsibility in transmitting things as they are, as they make sense. Right, so inshallah, I hope that's of some insight. People, can women vote about having Sharia law? Hell yeah, Nola, go for it. Of course, women can vote. What does that mean? Of course I believe women can vote. Right, did God speak to Moses, and how did He speak? How did He speak to Moses? We don't know these things. What about Gog Magog? You see, Sheikh Abdul Rahman al-Sa'di, the Salafi Sheikh, has a very interesting risala for Ya'juj wa Ma'juj. You should read it. It's available. It's online. Ibn Ashur and other people as well, they all speak about Ya'juj and Ma'juj are not these kind of monsters and these kind of little goblins and people that people think they are. In the risala of Sheikh Sa'di and other people, they've highlighted that these are most likely, because from the word Ya'uj, Ta'uj, like something that suddenly rises and suddenly kind of with it brings a kind of unsettling turmoil, that they felt that these were, I mean, people have interpreted differently, but Sheikh Sa'di felt that that was the kind of colonial period, Ya'juj and Ma'juj. And why that was so significant, because after it the world was never the same again. Everything changed, from the concept of the world to the economy to currency to nation states, to how everything changed. And that's, he has a risala, it's available online. I find it very interesting. Cool. Can you lead prayers with tayammum? Of course you can lead prayers with tayammum, as Imam Malik says in the Muwatta, that the person with tayammum, with wudu, is not more pure than a person who has tayammum. Right guys, I hope that's of some help. I'll leave you guys to it. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, subscribe to it, people. Subscribe to it, people. Subscribe to it. My Facebook page, both of them, like it, share it, right? Spread the love, people. Spread the love. If you want to reach out to me, you can send me a message. I do try to respond as much as I can. That's on Facebook Messenger or on Facebook. I am on Twitter, although I need to use it. Snapchat, Malm2014, MALM2014, Instagram, Mufti Abu Layth. Other than that, people, take very good care of yourselves. As always, you're absolutely awesome. Keep laughing. Stay blessed, people. Inshallah, enjoy the mercy and the blessings of Allah. And you see, this is how you should be positive. This is what I'm talking about. Not like these kind of angry faces going on. Right, so other than that, take very good care of yourselves, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.